All right, welcome into Commodity Wrap. I'm Scott Sheldy. Thank you very much for tuning us in. I'm with my next guest, the Venerable Mr. Brian Hoops. Brian, thanks for joining the show. Interesting day today. There's a little bit of green on the screen. It's good to see. But we've had kind of a black cloud over things as of late. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Scott, good to talk with you. You know, you look at this market, we've taken a lot of premium out of corn, soybeans, and wheat, and it's come in a very short period of time. We peaked in the middle of May, and so in less than 3-4 weeks, we've virtually removed the entire weather premium out of the corn market, and we've removed a lot of it out of soybeans, and a good portion of the rally we gave back over, half of it in the wheat market as well. Now, we're at price levels coming into this week that on weekly charts we thought would probably hold pretty well, given the massive fund liquidation that we've seen over the last 3-4 weeks. And over the last 3 days so far this week, we've seen funds lightly buy back into the corn market 3 days in a row. They've bought bean oil and wheat 3 days in a row, and they're starting to buy soybeans today as well. So maybe some of that selling that we had talked about, that pressure that really came out in the last 3-4 weeks to end May and begin the month of June, has subsided, at least for now. We have a lot of growing season ahead of us, so the market may want to step back and evaluate the fact that we don't have any weather premium in the corn market at all. We may want to put a little bit back in there just in case we get some sort of adverse weather over the next several weeks before we pollinate this corn crop.
Yeah, on Wall Street, I've started to notice that there's been a few more analysts, like they did at the beginning of the year, and then they kind of quieted down as things started to come off. But they've been talking about commodities, and they don't normally talk about it. And most of the time when they do, it's usually just silver, gold, coffee, cocoa kind of stuff. But it's now kind of branched into more of the row crops kind of things, and I'm bullish because I think there's going to be some money flowing that way. We do have an inflation issue. Yes, when oil pops, and it will pop at some point in time, we'll get the straits open. But that doesn't mean that inflation is going to go away 100%. I see some money moving this way, and maybe that's good after what you've seen some big drops. I think we've lost at least half of the year's rally in beans and almost all the year's rally in corn. And so if you're looking at things on a relative basis, it might be smart to start acquiring if you're a speculator at these levels.
You can't argue with any of that. We've seen pretty big washout by a lot of the speculative community in commodities, and it maybe started in some of the grain markets. We've certainly seen a big washout in the livestock sector, and now we're seeing something happening in gold, silver. Even the stock market has really seen a washout here recently. The gold market this morning took out the last bastion of support, the March lows, and it looks like we're going to close this afternoon below that area, that support area. So then now you're kind of left with trying to search for the next support area. But that was, I thought, the key point on the charts is that you've given back a lot of the rally that was seen last year into February this year, some retracements. And now it just seems like maybe some of the spec community pushing out of the commodity markets, that, of course, should set up and probably will set up another buying opportunity in a lot of these markets. But here in the near term, we've seen quite a lot of commodity fund-wide selling in the grains, cattle market, a lot of the metals markets, and the stock market. We're seeing a big drop as well.
Yeah, it's like I'm not really a big gold bug, but I'm starting to get a little interested here. And I think if we can put a 3 in front of it, I get really interested. Who knows? We're not too far away, only a couple $100 away. We had a $150 move today, so that could happen at any given moment in time. And we've had a run-up because we've got people that associate our grains with inflation. That helped us in the beginning of the year, as well as energy prices going higher because of what happened, or what's happening in Iran. But you put those things aside and actually maybe put them to bed. We open up the straits, oil comes down in price, and then we don't have the issue with inflation as much anymore. We had a 4.2% CPI reading today. But then does that give the next possible legs higher? You've already kind of you talked about one of them being weather, but then maybe the next one, the big C word, China?
Yeah, I think that's. I think we can look ahead and get past some of this stuff that we're dealing with this summer. We're talking about the weather and the grains, and you get into energy prices maybe eventually falling and bringing crude oil markets down would certainly help out our inflation numbers that came out this morning. They were pretty strong, and that would definitely help out the consumer side of things, getting prices lower. But China's made a commitment to increase their purchases of soybeans from 12 million tons up to 25. I think looking at the inspections numbers, they've almost accepted all those 12 million tons of soybeans already. So they're on pace to do that. I think with President Trump in office, he is going to hold them accountable, make sure that they do purchase that 25 million tons of soybeans. And it looks like there was another agreement, although we haven't really heard much in the way of any details about it, that they would purchase additional ag products that could include corn and wheat and sorghum and maybe some other products. So yeah, it's bright lights might be ahead of us in this grain market. To get past some of this weather and get past this harvest, we may see much more robust demand coming down our pike here for these grain markets, especially when you look at EA5 being granted year-round status. That's the first time we've had that. That should improve a little bit of demand for U.S. ethanol and help corn demand out in that respect. So I'm looking for more optimistic going into 2027 and 28 than I think we have been in quite some time.
Yeah, we have to be careful. If both you and I are optimistic, that might not be good. All right, brother, stay right there. We're going to go away. We're going to pay a few bills. We're going to come back and talk more with Brian Hoops right after this.
All right, here we go. Segment 2, 3, 2, 1, go.
Well, welcome back into a commodity wrap. I'm Scott Schultz, otherwise known as the Cow Guy. This is, I'm with Brian Hoops. He's our guest today. Brian, one thing we haven't talked about, we just got done talking about the crops in the first segment, but the second thing I want to kind of run by you is New World screwworm and cattle prices. What's going on over there in your mind? How do you see things? And I might even give you a little bit of what I think's going on.
Well, yeah, I think it was inevitable that we were going to have it in the United States at some point this summer. It's hard to control those flies and where they're going to fly. And I think, the Texas Ag Commissioner had pointed out earlier this winter or spring, it was almost inevitable that it would happen in the United States, but we were taking steps to prevent it and control it if it did happen best we can. And so now we're at that stage where it is in the United States. Last I heard, we were at 4 confirmed cases, and there may be more cases that have gone unreported, and that is certainly a possibility that we may not see all these cases reported. The rancher doesn't want to deal with it or deal with the quarantine process. So it's here in the United States. Now we have to deal with it. I think it's probably in the long term the best thing that could happen for us, because we knew it was going to happen at some point, but you had all kinds of headline risk every time we talked about screwworm or someone would mention that it's getting closer to the U.S. It seemed like the market was jittery and sold off, and we certainly had that headline risk when it was first announced. We sold off considerably in that cattle market, but I think once we realize it's not in the food supply, our food is safe, we can actually see this as being more of a longer-term positive for the markets. Now, we're not away from the headline risk completely, and there is some countries that are starting to say, we don't want to accept U.S. beef because of the screwworm, and Canada has shut its borders down to U.S. cattle imports out of the state of Texas. Mexico's talking about stopping U.S. export shipments. Reality, we're not exporting a lot of beef to begin with because of our tight supplies, so it's not a huge deal. A lot of these countries are buying more of the lower or middle cut meats than what we want to. That's what we want to send to them anyway. So I think we're probably going to downplay that eventually. It's not a great headline, but we can get past that. And I think longer term, we're going to be looking at prices trying to move higher again. I think this month's cattle and feed report could be a little bit friendly after our bearish report last month.
Yeah, there's definitely some politics at play. I agree with you, and and this thing's come from Mexico anyway. I don't know where they get on their high horse saying that they're. Stop it. I mean, it's just almost boring the way they behave. But it is interesting to see how. I would argue that our markets have been fairly orderly. When a few people were kind of nervous about you're exactly right. It was acting jittery, but now that it's kind of happened and it's in the past, it seems to me that things are fairly orderly. What do you think?
I agree. I think it was, you rip that Band-Aid off and kind of get it out there, and now you can be more orderly and trade more of the other news and fundamentals we don't have to react to. every time there's a new screwworm outbreak close to the Texas-Mexican border, or even in the United States, we don't have to sell the cattle market off considerably, because we know what we're dealing with. We know we're going to contain it. We're going to handle it. They are taking steps to eradicate it. It's certainly a headline because it's the first time since 1966 we've had it in this country, but yet here we are. We can handle it, and I think the markets realized that and reacted positively to that, and is wanting to go trade more back into the fundamentals of how much demand there is and versus our supplies.
Yeah, you made a great point. It's not in the food in the food chain, and I don't want to play out on that too much, because I start to feel like it's COVID all over again, with the government trying to beat you up with this information that's not really good. Because at first it started to feel like that to me, that one case, so we have 2, now 4, oh my gosh, 5. Is CNN going to start to put how many cases of screwworm we have on their backboard during every every broadcast? No. But it just felt like that in the beginning, and I'm glad we've kind of moved away from that, and we're a little bit more orderly. Things are a little bit more calm and normal. I think the USDA has got a decent plan. We'll get some more of these sterile flies out there, and I feel like that we're going to get on top of this a lot sooner than people think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're on top of it already, and in another month or 2 goes by, I don't think we'll react to it at all with any headlines. If there's another outbreak, I think it's just going to be kind of, market's going to look at it and just ignore it.
Yeah, the best way you can say it is it's not really a food issue as much as it is a cost of operation issue for our ranchers. I'll give you the last 10 seconds.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a pain for these ranchers having to deal with it, and that's why I think a lot of them may not actually report it. They're just going to deal with it internally instead of reporting it, and not have to go through the quarantine and all the other process that goes with it. So that we may hear a lot about that at some point down the road, that there were more cases than what we knew.